You are listening to the 5 a.m. podcast, and today is your day. Welcome to the 5 a.m. podcast, where we explore the intersection of creativity, purpose, and personal growth. Today, we have the privilege of speaking with Peter Gunn, a remarkable individual whose journey spans military service, physical discipline, and literary innovation. Peter is a U.S. Air Force veteran who served for over 2 decades. He's an accomplished bodybuilder and a visionary poet on a mission to revolutionize epic poetry for the modern era. Through his groundbreaking work, The Amazons, Peter addresses a critical imbalance in classical literature by crafting epic tales that elevate feminine perspectives and demonstrates the power of masculine and feminine energies working in harmony, which I really liked and took away from reading his book. As a father seeking to share his passion for epic poetry with his daughter, Peter recognized the pattern in works like Homer's Odyssey, the Iliad, even Beowulf, where women are often relegated to the roles of villains or victims, or perhaps even that footnote. Well, this observation sparked a creative rebellion that led to his development of the linked lyrical poetry, a unique storytelling approach that combines the rhythm of contemporary verse with the scope and grandeur of ancient epics. Today, we'll explore Peter's creative process, his military background, the philosophies behind his work, and why he believes the time has come for women to wield the sword in literature instead of just the walking stick. Now, a hearty welcome to you, the listener and watcher. We appreciate you being here, and please consider sharing this with 3 of your friends. I know many are going to enjoy this conversation, and you guys are going to want to get this book because it's actually it's a good read. Now, a big thanks to those who have given us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast player. And of course, thanks to those that have ventured over to buymeacoffee.com/5am podcast and bought us a few of those delicious virtual cups of coffee. We appreciate all levels of support. Thanks for being here. Peter Gunn, welcome to the 5am podcast.
I'm happy to be here, Michael. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. That was fun reading that book, and I did like the artwork. That was great. I know my cousins and my older brother and I, man, we read a lot of comic books, and it was great to get that vibe from your story and to see the Amazons and the men of that period and the Navy, the redcoats, who we all know what to do with. And
yes.
And I know that you're passionate about reviving this epic poetry for contemporary audiences, and I actually really liked the iambic pentameter and that flow of reading through, and I really my brain liked it. So what was your first?
You're not the only one that has said that.
Okay.
My director Andrea has said I kept accidentally rhyming, and I didn't intend to do it, and it's happened to me where I'll spend an hour or two writing, and then I'll get up, take a phone call, and suddenly I'm rhyming, and I'm still rhyming because I'm speaking. It gets into your head. Yes.
It does. It does.
Yes.
Totally. I got to ask you, what was your first encounter with epic poetry, and when did you realize this older, I don't want to say ancient, but this ancient art form needed a modern revolution?
Well, when I had my daughter, I wanted to enroll her into my love of poetry and the epic like the Iliad, the Odyssey.
Yeah.
And then so you're there at the bookstore and you're looking at all of them came a realization like, wait a minute, where's something a young girl could get into, or a woman that
Yes.
and there's nothing, like, well, wait a minute, there has to be something. I started looking, there really isn't anything. There's great female poets,
Yes.
but there's none in the epic hero's journey in poetry. So I figured, okay, I did some investigation then, and I just decided, okay, why don't I do it? Let's see if I could do something. And I actually sat down and I researched every form of poetry from beginning to end, because some of them are very difficult, even more than LLP, where you have to have that iambic rhyming, and then, you have to stop and you need another rhyme. Okay, you have the AAB, the repeating, and stuff like that. So it makes it more difficult, challenging. Now, I love that. I love a challenge. I love the craftsmanship of so well-written poems, like
Yes.
Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven. I love it.
Right.
You know, but and I think it's almost universally. Everybody loves it around the world. But think, what if he had turned it into a novel and he kept that up? You know, if
Right.
it would have been one of the best-selling books in the world. I guarantee it. At least one of the best poetry books in the world.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and it was fascinating the way that you wove your storyline through that. And like you say, you were able to keep that pattern going. And I can imagine you probably had to fight through some, not necessarily writer's blocks, but some rhyming blocks. Can you talk about how you were able to propel yourself through for all these stanzas?
Well, I like to look at it as a brushstroke on a page. Okay, we're artists, and when you write poetry, you are an artist.
Yes.
Okay, so you have to be willing to put that brushstroke on and then keep going. You know, and I had actually, when I was going through editors, I actually had to go through a lot of them. I actually got into a fight with one of them over the word. I believe it was unpursed. Okay, now he's right. There is no such word as unpursed, but I needed to use it in order to keep the rhyme scheme going. But you and me say, you tell it to somebody, they know exactly what you mean. So that was my brush stroke that he wanted to take away. I'm like, no, and we got into argument over it. And I actually had to go through a lot of editors to get this going. But you have to be willing when you sit down and if you're going to delve into LLP, be willing to sit there and not make progress. Okay, so you paragraph, maybe in an hour. If and sometimes it sucks is you think you have the perfect rhyme scheme going, but then there isn't a word that will rhyme. You can't get it to work. So then you have to be willing to go back and delete several paragraphs and start over.
Wow. Yeah. Turn everyday teaching moments into a valuable lesson about long-term wealth preservation. The time is now. Visit myinstantgold.com. So how did you come up with the story arc of this book?
Well, I've always, like I said, I needed something that only brought in the feminine, but the masculine. Okay. And I know coming from you, we have to come from a human perspective. So we have to bring in humans.
Yes.
Okay. So the way I decided to do it is when I was reading about the Napoleonic War. Okay. There was, now this is just speculation. This is just rumors, but it's happened where people were saying that the king at the time, so early 1800s, wasn't in his right mind, and the queen was actually running the show behind the scenes.
Okay.
So what else does a good wife do? When her husband fails, she steps in, and she apparently did that. And it got me to thinking: she's in a desperate, going to be desperate because I know that Napoleonic War bankrupted them, so they'd be looking for money. So there was now this isn't in the story, but how because this is going to be in the in the future chapters.
Yes.
How he actually found it was a young Jack Genesee Sr. was sitting in a museum, and a light came through a window. Okay, and he's a cartographer. He's a map maker, and it made the lines on this ancient old script sitting in the museum. Okay. Nice. Of course, a cartographer knows exactly what those are map lines, and he saw a map in an old script where no one else had seen it, and he deciphered it, brought it to the queen, and then because it said there was the promise of money, there's gold, and she was desperate, and she decided to fund the expedition.
Oh, that's exciting. Is that's in the next book that's coming up, correct?
It's coming. It's going to be at least a trilogy, if not more. So because the response I've got has been just phenomenal. Yeah.
Oh, good. Thanks for watching the show. Just a reminder that you can get all of our resources, other episodes, and read our blog posts at 5ampodcast.com. Good. Do you have a favorite moment within these stanzas that you really maybe personalized or thought, man, this is my favorite baby right here?
Um, I like the correlation and the friendship between the brother and sister. Okay,
Yeah.
so anything between Jack and his sister Lynn, I like
Yep.
that because it reminds me of being with my sister.
Okay,
Yeah,
gotcha.
we're
Yeah,
very
that's
close.
good.
Yeah,
That's good. I like that. I like the use of the vampire bats. That was
yeah.
good. And the other part too, as I mentioned in the introduction, was you really showed the power of when the feminine power and the masculine power comes together, united, of what
Mm-hmm,
can be accomplished.
mm-hmm.
And that's not something that's really talked about in our world, in like this
It needs
North
to be.
American
It
ethos,
needs
and
to
it
be.
needs to be.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm,
I often tell whoever will listen, if you think a man and woman coming together can create another human life, that spark of life will actually come at one point. What else can the feminine and masculine energies do when they're united so closely?
mm-hmm.
That's a big thing that I took away from your book.
Yeah.
So,
There's another
yeah.
hidden message that I also wrote in there, and I want young boys to think about it too. I mean, they're automatically given, physical strength over women when you're
Mm.
born, as a man, and there's
Yeah.
other certain things in society that you're given, automatically as a man. If
Yes.
that was all taken away from you and you were thrust in this society now that they don't care about your physical strength, it means
Yes.
nothing. How would you be judged? Would they
Yeah.
consider you to be a good man?
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And I like too that in the story you really played to the strengths. You've got the Amazons and their whole mindset and the mindset shift that had to take place.
Mhm,
And then the same thing too, the men had to fight through a lot of fear
mhm.
to make it through the pages of your book.
Yeah.
The other interesting thing too was the fighting amongst the men themselves. But I want to ask you about the character development in the Amazons. The characters that really made an impression on me: Ivy, Lynn, and Jack, and they demonstrated that complex relationship across cultural divides.
Mhm.
So how did you balance then creating that the feminine characters while avoiding simply reversing gender stereotypes?
Well, I kept in mind to keep them feminine, to keep them a female.
Yeah.
But if you noticed, the little takeaway is all the Amazons have like nicknames, three letter
Yes.
words.
Yeah.
Now, okay, that comes from humanity. If a mother names her son Teddy, he
Yeah.
doesn't want to be called Teddy. Okay,
No.
especially if he grows up to be a man, he'll say, "Call me Ted."
Yes.
Okay, and that's where the females or that society, that Amazon society, embrace masculinity more, and they adopted that sort of thing. Is the nickname? Yes.
Oh, that's cool. That's an attention to detail, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
That's definitely in this book. And we got to talk a lot more. But as people are listening to this, they probably want to multitask. So why don't you give us your web address right now? It's a little
They can.
early to do it, but
Okay, you can go to my website at www.petergunn.net, and I have most of my projects up there, and also links to the Amazons and my other projects.
yes, good. I know it's kind of early in our conversation, but I was just envisioning some people were like, okay, Michael, you're talking about these images and these vampire bats and the red coats, and we've got to see some color here right now because it's only the ear gate that's functioning. So
Mhm.
I wanted, one of the big things that authors love to do and that I've talked with many authors about is that world building. And so this Amazon society that you created in your work has intricate political structures. It's got the military hierarchy. It's got cultural practices. So how did you approach building this world while actually keeping it accessible through the poetic form?
Well, a lot of research, first off,
Okay.
and any good writer would do that. They'll delve into research. but I also wanted to bring in reality, and I call that pulling of Dan Brown, because if you read
Okay.
Dan Brown's books,
Yes.
he'll do that. Is he'll mix the fantasy with reality, and then
Yeah.
it'll leave you scratching your head like, well, wait a minute, is this true or not?
Yeah.
Like the
Right.
Da Vinci Code, you know?
Yes.
And I decided to do that to bring in that actual reality. So like
Yeah.
things like a fight to the death, pancration. It's actually existed in the ancient times.
Hmm.
Okay, it was a normal practice for things like that. Um, so it was important to me to because it made the book and the poets the poems seem more real. You
Yeah.
know, like it could have actually happened. And if you
Yeah.
do delve into the Amazon itself, the jungle, okay, there are enormous 10-foot plus bones of skeletons that have been found there.
Wow.
Okay. And each scientist will admit it that there could be a city there. It's so dense that they
Wow.
wouldn't know it.
Wow.
This could actually legitimately exist, is what I'm
Right.
saying.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. It's like the city of gold, and it makes
Yes.
me think of Alan Quartermain, and some of those great stories of the past. I had speaking of Dan Brown, I actually had a crew member many years ago when that was really popular, and I was like, I felt like I was talking him down off the ledge because it's like, okay, dude, he mixes
Yes.
the
Yes.
fantasy and
Yes.
reality,
Mhm.
and it's wonderful when you can read a book and like yours, for example, where you can, you see in the images, the scale of the Amazon ladies and the men that come in, and then you read about these trials or the tribulations or the negotiations
Mhm.
that they have to go through, and you think back to those images, and I was like, man, this needs to be a graphic novel. I need some more images to go along with this, but
Yeah,
I
I am planning on doing that. Yes.
oh,
Right
nice.
now, we are redoing the audio book. We've
Okay.
hired about 30 voice actors,
Oh, wow.
and everybody gets to, yeah, is going to be original voice, it's going to be a live drama, and there's going to be a soundtrack at the end. So it's going to be
Wow.
quite expansive. Yeah.
Wow,
And
that sounds like
I've written and produced all the songs myself.
wow. Wow, that's impressive. That is a Herculean task to take a word out
Using
of the past.
LLP.
Okay.
LLP gives to music very well. I will say that. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so I'm going to ask you about the military battles. I don't want to give away too much, but there's some pretty cool stuff in this book. The tactical elements in the
Mhm.
Amazons. I talked about the the vampire bats, and there's more in there. The final naval battle. They reflect this military precision, and I was thinking, with your time in the Air Force, how specifically did your career there maybe experience kind of the shape and structure of these strategic elements in the book?
Well, everyone says there's no such thing as utopian society,
Hmm.
correct? You know,
Yeah.
but I beg to differ because
Okay.
they never looked at the military. Because
Oh,
there's all ages, all colors, all religions.
oh, that's a good
Everybody
point.
is completely mixed there, right?
Right.
And we all get along. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, granted, we have the UCMJ hanging over our heads.
Yes.
Yes. But when we work as a team, we do amazing, amazing things. And I do consider it to be a utopian society. And that's why I integrated it into the
Interesting.
book, is to show what happens when you can get along. You become more powerful than just by yourself.
Oh, that's good. That's pretty profound too. And some might say heard and understood, depending on the branch.
Yes,
But
yes.
yeah, the I just bring up heard and understood because I just interviewed a U.S. a former retired, I should say, U.S. Army captain, and so
Okay.
we were talking a little bit
Cool.
about that. Yeah, and so I got to ask you. I was thinking about this. Your work really does represent that interesting power dynamics between the Amazons and the humans. What message did you hope to convey about cooperation versus conflict between different societies?
Well, there is going to be in the next books, there is going to be a conflict. Okay. And it always comes down to money. I mean,
Yeah.
basically every conflict in the entire world
Yeah.
comes down to money in some
Yeah,
fashion,
that's
does it
right.
not? Yes.
It sure does.
So the queen at the time now is Queen Victoria, and she is going to be greedy. Okay. And she's going to want what the gold that they have. And
Yeah.
so there is going to be more that ensue in the second book. But I also made a point to show what happens when you cooperate and when you get along, especially with Jack and Lynn, being brother and
Yes.
sister. Yeah. So it shows both things, but trust me, I'll hit on them.
Thanks for watching the show. Just a reminder that you can get all of our resources, other episodes, and read our blog posts at 5ampodcast.com. Gold prices have historically risen during economic uncertainty. The time is now. Visit mindstandgold.com today and secure your family's future with your first gold purchase. Your children's financial future is too important to delay. Start their golden future at mindstandgold.com. Oh, that's good. That's good. So your story, The Amazons, blends that classical mythology and those original fantasy elements that so many of us love. What was there maybe some specific research points that you went to in developing that whole mythological aspect, but while making it your own?
Well, I looked at comic books a lot, and I
Okay.
looked at the history of them, and I wanted someone that a young girl could look up to, okay, and idolize, and not be, so we say, let down, okay, or
Yeah.
not have her mother like, oh my gosh, don't read this, Yes.
Yeah. Right.
So I wanted someone that was also human, though, that cried, and that was okay, and that's one of the reasons why I killed off her mother, Lynn's mother, in the book, is because there's a lot of young girls that have to deal with that in their lives. It
Yeah.
happens. Suddenly, they're thrust into the being the matriarch. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. There's some great points and some great value in the storyline of Tales for Life, really. In that, the other point, and maybe I touched on it a little bit, but I really liked that the women could play to their strengths and the men could play to their strengths. But we saw what happens when they come together. And so this family impact that you're talking about, when sharing the Amazons with your daughter, which character, or maybe other than the mother dying, was there a moment that really resonated with your daughter? And what was her reaction like?
I would say it was probably when Lynn was freed from any, should we say, charges.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, she liked reading that part and seeing that the character that she liked then being freed, and then all of a sudden everyone getting along again. Yeah.
Yeah. That vindication. That vindication. And it almost seemed like, from my reading the book, that getting along again was actually because people realized this was the road to travel, and not the antagonism or the pride or that lust for power and money that we see around us. And so for our 5 a.m. podcast community, we'd love to hear your thoughts on this discussion right now with Peter Gunn. So I got to ask you, how has epic poetry or the epics, fantasy of literature shaped your perception of heroism and gender roles? So we'd love to hear your reflections in the comments below. Peter, give us that website one more time of how people can get in touch with you.
Sure. It's www.petergunn.net. And I have all my stuff on there, most of my projects.
That's great. So I'm going to ask you, have you encountered any resistance from traditional literary circles regarding your revival of this epic poetry or your focus on this kind of strong feminine character?
A lot of them think I'm crazy, and that's
good.
okay. I consider that a compliment because they thought a lot of like Einstein, they thought he was crazy,
Yeah.
So I mean,
crazy
it's
like
okay.
a fox.
They thought Tesla was crazy, so I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
If you want to change the world, you have to push a norm. and you have
That's
to. So you have
that's
to
right.
be willing to stick your foot in the door. Yeah.
That's right. And as Einstein is credited with saying that I think crazy is defined by doing exactly the same thing over and over
Hmm.
and expecting
Yeah.
different results.
Yeah.
And so thinking outside the box, being able to get out of a rut or something like that, that's key. That's what we're about here at 5 a.m. podcast. And you have a great story to tell. So I wanted to ask you about, as someone dedicated to bodybuilding and writing and poetry, do you see a lot of parallels between that physical training and creative work? And how does one discipline maybe inform the other?
Well, it is discipline
Mm.
it allows me to do it. The discipline of bodybuilding taught me a lot. It taught me the discipline to be able to sit down and write and not be
Yeah.
distracted. Not stay on my phone and not do other things. It
Yeah.
allowed me to be a disciplined person in order to make this book. It took about, say, 2 years, I'd say, to
Wow.
write and
Okay.
finish, and about 8 takes, so 8 different variations of it. So it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy, especially writing in LLP. It can be frustrating. There are times when I have to walk away and
Right.
take a breath. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And it almost there'd be a parallel in trying to get your personal record at the gym.
yeah,
And
yeah.
sometimes I know there was one thing that I was trying to get and I just could not get there. I was visualizing it. I was thinking about it. I was working towards it. Just couldn't get there. Had to stand up, walk away and think I'll get it. I'll get it one day. But I gotta, how do you ask, or sorry, how do you envision epic poetry evolving in our digital age? And do you think that there's a role maybe to play in the evolution of that?
Well, I wrote it for Gen Z and the upcoming Gen Alpha. And
Right?
now you could say it's too short, but they have a short attention span. So they need something in small, bite-sized bits that they
Yeah.
can sit down, and it's because there are a lot of them that aren't going to pick up a novel.
Hmm.
War and Peace is foreign to them. It will be foreign to them. Okay, they're
Yeah.
not going to attempt it. So I needed something that would be easy for them to read, comprehend, and then,
Yeah.
perhaps if they want to try writing in LLP on their own. And I am going to start classes up here
Oh,
shortly.
nice. Oh,
So
that's great. That's great. And that size and bite-sized pieces. You and I were talking about Dennis Henson, who was a guest on the show, and his Real Impact book has a whole bunch of options in it, from poetry to short stories to longer accounts, and that's great in our day and age. I know if my wife and I are sitting down to watch something on the YouTubes, as you do, you're actually, who cares about the title and whatever you're trying to entice me with? I want to see how long this is. Do I have enough time?
see,
And
yes, yes, yeah.
totally, totally. So
Mhm.
I want to ask you about reader response. Like, what has surprised you most about how readers, and maybe particularly women or young ladies, have responded to the Amazons? Have any reactions particularly moved or challenged you?
I've had women come up to me in tears and said, "Thank you for writing such a beautiful poem."
Oh, nice.
And ones that identified with Lynn and her mother passing, and it reminded them of their mother passing. So
Wow.
yes, yeah.
That's
And
great.
then, like, I've had people, because they've never read LLP before, they might not have much exposure to
Hmm.
poetry,
Yep.
and they usually use expletive words. How the f did I do it?
Yeah.
Because like, they don't understand that I could make the whole thing continuously go and rhyme. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Mission accomplished, sir. I got to ask you about Kurupi's Curse. This is your second work.
Yes, it's a
And
children's book. It's
okay.
currently in rewrite right now. We're going
Okay.
to try to adapt LLP into that as well. But
Nice.
it's something also where you could put it on the buy it in Audible, okay, or let your kid read it and walk away and not worry,
Yeah,
okay.
right.
But also empowers the feminine. It shows a story about a young girl that grows up, and an evil forest creature
Hmm.
falls in love with her and tries to trick her father into letting her marry him.
Oh, interesting. Oh,
Yeah.
that sounds there's like modern fables for modern times, I would say,
Yes.
by the
Yes.
sounds of that. That's good.
Hmm.
I wanted to ask you on more of a practical tip. Many creative people might struggle to finish their projects, and maybe this in another way. even with bodybuilding, some people have a goal and a vision, but they sometimes just can't get over that finish line or past the 20-yard line. What advice would you give to writers who they know they've got a brilliant idea, but they're struggling to complete it, or they're getting far too many no's?
Well, there's that old saying, how do you eat an elephant?
Yeah.
And the answer is one bite at a time. Okay.
Yeah.
People look at the elephant and then walk away like, I can't do that. But all they need to do is take a bite.
Right.
Okay. So you need to learn to look at it that way. It's a large task, but you just need to do one small fraction of it now. And then tomorrow do another small fraction, another small fraction.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Look after the nickels and dimes, and the dollars will take care of themselves, or something like that. Exactly. Yeah. I wanted to ask you, so beyond the classic epics, have there been authors or fictional works that have really had a profound impact on you and maybe led you to the development of the linked lyrical poetry?
I would say David Coverdale. Now, this isn't the poet, but I consider him a poet. He was the lead singer of the 80s band Whitesnake.
Okay.
Now, if you read his songs, they're poetry to me. Okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the flow was there, and it was one of the things that inspired me to start writing LLP.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow,
because
that's great.
The flow in the song, and like I said, LLP lends the songs very well. Okay. Yes. It inspired me. Yeah.
Wow. Oh, that's great. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to remind you that you can discover more about Peter Gunn and his groundbreaking work at Peter Gunn, that's with 2 N's, .net.
Yep.
You can also explore his Tales podcast, rather, on Spotify. Just search for Tales, Tales podcast on Spotify. You'll find more from Peter there. Peter, a huge thank you for joining me today for the 5 a.m. podcast.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate you letting me be here.
Oh yeah, this was a lot of fun. I enjoyed the book. I enjoyed our conversation, and definitely wish you all the best in your future endeavors. Absolutely.
Thank you, Michael. Have a good day.
Yes. And I want to thank, before we go, I got to thank our viewers too. We do appreciate you joining us here. And if you haven't already, please help spread the work of Peter Gunn and also this channel. Give us a like, a subscribe, and a share. Share this with your friends and others that you think might enjoy this and need to hear it. And we, of course, want to thank those that interact with us on our Buy Me a Coffee site and our other social media pages. Be sure to check those out. Thanks for being here, everyone. Make sure to seize your day, and please enjoy those sunrises and sunsets and all your adventures in between. I'm Michael Klassen. Thanks for watching the show. Just a reminder that you can get all of our resources, other episodes, and read our blog posts at 5ampodcast.com. Turn everyday teaching moments into a valuable lesson about long-term wealth preservation. Gold prices have historically risen during economic uncertainty. The time is now. Visit mindstandgold.com today and secure your family's future with your first gold purchase. Your children's financial future is too important to delay. Start their golden future at mindstandgold.com.